I didn't even get a call. Just a message. Don't come. You're not family anymore. I read it twice. Then a third time, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something less cruel. But they didn't. They stayed sharp. Final. My fingers hovered over the screen, typing, deleting, typing again. Are you serious right now? The message showed delivered. Then nothing. No reply. No explanation. Just silence. And the worst part? It wasn't just any day. It was the morning of my father's funeral. I sat there on the edge of my bed, already dressed in black, shoes by the door, keys in my hand, like someone who still believed they belonged somewhere. But apparently I didn't. And just when I thought that was the worst it could get, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. But something in me said, do it. Hello. Miss Carter? This is Daniel from First National Bank. We need you to come in. There's a file here, with your name on it. I frowned. What file? Pause. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. It's regarding your father. And just like that, everything I thought I understood about my family started to shift. My name is Vanessa Carter. I'm 34 years old. And if you met me back then, you probably wouldn't have noticed me. I wasn't the loud one in the room. I wasn't the one people turned to for attention or approval. I didn't have the perfect life, the perfect clothes, or the kind of personality that filled space effortlessly. I worked a steady job as a compliance officer at a bank. Not glamorous. Not exciting. Just stable. I spent my days reviewing transactions, checking documents, spotting things most people overlooked. Quiet work. The kind that doesn't get applause, but matters more than people realize. In my family, though, that didn't mean much. Because I wasn't her. My younger sister, Elena, she was the one they always praised. The one with the confidence, the charm, the way of walking into a room and making people feel like she belonged there. He got the attention, the compliments, the second chances. I got silence. Or worse, polite indifference. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't mistreated in some obvious dramatic way. There were no screaming matches growing up. No doors slammed in my face. It was quieter than that. It was in the way my achievements were acknowledged with a nod, while hers were celebrated with dinners. It was in the way my opinions were considered, and then ignored. It was in the way I became the one who handled things behind the scenes, paperwork, errands, responsibilities, while she stood in the spotlight. And I let it happen. For years. Because I thought, that's just how families work sometimes. Because I thought if I kept showing up, kept helping, kept being reliable, eventually they'd see me. Eventually I'd matter. And when my dad got sick, I really believed that was my chance. Not in a selfish way, but in a, this is where family comes together kind of way. I visited him at the hospital when I could. After work, late evenings, sometimes just for 20 minutes. We didn't always talk much. But I was there. I remember one night sitting beside him while he slept, the machines humming quietly around us, and thinking, this matters. Even if no one else sees it. I didn't post about it. Didn't tell extended relatives. Didn't turn it into something performative. I just showed up. Elena, on the other hand, handled things differently. She was there too, but in bursts. Big gestures. Loud moments. The kind that people noticed. She spoke to doctors, made decisions, updated relatives in group chats. And somehow, she became the center of the story. The devoted daughter. The strong one. The one holding everything together. And I let that happen too. Because I thought, again, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. As long as we're there for him. But I didn't realize something at the time. While I was focused on being present, someone else was focused on being in control. The morning of the funeral, I sat there longer than I should have. Still holding my phone. Still hoping that maybe, just maybe, another message would come through. Something like, I'm sorry. That was too much. Of course you should come. But nothing came. Only that one line. Don't come. You're not family anymore. I laughed at first. A short, broken kind of laugh. Because how do you even respond to that? How does someone just decide that for you? I stood up slowly, walked to the mirror and looked at myself. Black dress. Minimal makeup. Hair pulled back neatly. I looked exactly like someone who was going to a funeral. But suddenly, I felt like someone who had just been erased. And I had a choice to make. Stay home. Accept it. Disappear quietly the way I always had. Or go anyway. I wish I could tell you I made that decision confidently. That I stood tall, chin up, ready to face whatever came. But the truth is, I hesitated. A lot. Because there's something about being rejected by your own family that hits different. It doesn't just hurt. It makes you question everything. Your place. Your worth. Your memories. Were they ever real? Did I imagine being part of that family? Or was I always just nearby? I grabbed my keys. Walked to the door. Opened it. Closed it again. Sat down. Stood up. I must have done that 5 times. Until finally I said it out loud. I'm going. Not because I wanted to fight. Not because I wanted to prove anything. But because he was my father. And no text message, no matter how cruel, was going to take that away from me. So I picked up my keys again. This time I didn't hesitate. I walked out the door, locked it behind me, and headed to my car. And as I drove, I had no idea that what was waiting for me there was going to be even worse than that message. I didn't rush. That might sound strange, but I didn't. The road to the church was one I'd driven 100 times before. Family gatherings, holidays, birthdays. And yet that morning, everything felt different. Quieter. Heavier. Like even the air knew something had shifted. I kept replaying the message in my head. Don't come. Not please don't come. Not it might be better if you stayed home. Just don't. Flat. Final. Like I'd already been written out. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Part of me kept asking, what did I do? Because that's where your mind goes, right? You don't immediately think they're wrong. You think, what did I miss? But no matter how many times I ran through the past few weeks, nothing made sense. I had been there. Maybe not loudly. Maybe not visibly. But I had been there. So why did it feel like I was the only one being pushed out? By the time I pulled into the parking lot, it was already filling up. Cars lined in neat rows. People stepping out in dark clothes, quiet voices, careful expressions. I sat there for a moment, engines still running. Watching. Trying to gather myself. Because the truth is, I was nervous. Not about the funeral. About them. I spotted a few familiar faces. Distant relatives, neighbors, people who had known my dad for years. They all seemed normal. Like nothing unusual had happened. Like there wasn't a message floating out there telling me I didn't belong. I took a deep breath, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The moment my heels hit the pavement, I felt it. That shift. That subtle awareness that people were noticing me. A few heads turned. Some eyes lingered a second too long. And then came the whispers. Not loud. But enough. She came. I thought. Didn't Elena say? I kept walking. Straight ahead. Shoulders steady. Eyes forward. If I stopped now I wouldn't go in. And I needed to go in. For him. I made it halfway to the entrance before someone stepped in front of me. My aunt. She looked uncomfortable. Not angry. Not cold. Just caught in the middle. Vanessa, she said softly. I nodded. Hi. Her eyes flickered toward the doors behind her, then back to me. It shouldn't be here. There was. Out loud this time. I swallowed. Excuse me. She lowered her voice. Elena said she spoke to you. She sent a text, I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. My aunt sighed like this was all just inconvenient. She's under a lot of stress right now. We all are. It's just better if you don't come in. Better. That word hit harder than I expected. Better for who? I asked. She didn't answer. Because she didn't have to. We both knew. I'm not here to cause a scene, I said. I just want to say goodbye to my dad. And for a second, just a second, I thought she might step aside. Her expression softened. Her shoulders dropped. Like she understood. But then, she shook her head. I'm sorry. And she didn't move. That's when I saw her. Elena. Standing just inside the entrance. Perfectly composed. Black dress. Hair styled neatly. Not a single thing out of place. She looked calm. Too calm. Like this was all going exactly the way she wanted. Our eyes met. And for a moment everything else faded. No whispers. No people. No noise. Just us. I waited. For something. A flicker of hesitation. A hint of guilt. Anything. But all I got was a look I'd never seen from her before. Cold. Distant. Final. She stepped closer to the doorway just enough to be heard. You shouldn't have come. Not loud, but loud enough. Every conversation around us slowed. People were listening now. Watching. I felt it. That heat creeping up my neck. That tightness in my chest. But I didn't look away. I'm here for Dad, I said. Her expression didn't change. No, she replied. You're here to make this about you. That one landed hard. Because it wasn't just a rejection. It was an accusation. Suddenly, I wasn't just unwanted. I was the problem. I visited him, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to control it. I was there. You showed up when it was convenient, she cut in. That's not true. Then where were you when decisions had to be made? She shot back. I stared at her. Because the truth? I didn't even know what decisions she was talking about. And that's when it clicked. She hadn't just excluded me from the funeral. She had been excluding me for a while. I just hadn't seen it yet. I called you, I said quietly. You stopped answering. He shrugged. I had a lot going on. And I didn't? Her eyes narrowed slightly. This isn't the time. No, I said, my voice firmer now. You don't get to decide that after shutting me out. A few people shifted uncomfortably behind her. My aunt touched my arm. Vanessa, please. But I couldn't stop now. Not after everything. You don't get to rewrite what happened, I continued. I was there. Maybe not the way you wanted, but I was there. Elena exhaled slowly like she was losing patience. Then she said the one thing that I don't think I'll ever forget. He didn't ask for you. Silence. Complete. Heavy. It felt like the ground dropped out from under me. Because that wasn't just about today. That was about everything. Every visit. Every moment. Every quiet effort. Dismissed. With one sentence. I blinked, trying to process it. Trying to decide if I had heard her right. But the look on her face told me. I had. And worse. She believed it. Or at least, she wanted everyone else to. I don't believe you, I said, barely above a whisper. You don't have to, she replied. But you still need to leave. There was again. That final push. That clear line. You don't belong here. I looked past her. Through the open doors. I could see the rows of chairs. The front where the casket was placed. People were already seated. The service was about to start. And I wasn't allowed in. Not as a daughter. Not as family. Not as anything. For a second, I thought about pushing past her. Just walking in. Sitting down. Forcing them to deal with it. But then I realized something. That wouldn't change anything. It would just give them exactly what they wanted. A scene. A reason to point and say, see, this is why we didn't want her here. So I said, I stepped back. One step. Then another. My chest felt tight. My eyes burned. My hands were shaking. But I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of them. Hey, I said. And for the first time, Elena looked surprised. Just a flicker. Because she had expected a fight. A reaction. Something loud. But I gave her nothing. I turned around. Walked back across the parking lot. Past the same people who had watched me arrive. Only now, they weren't whispering. They were staring. And this time, I knew exactly what they were thinking. I got into my car. Closed the door. And just sat there. Hands on my lap. Breathing. Trying to hold it together. As something had just broken. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But completely. And as I drove away, I realized something that scared me more than anything else. This wasn't just about the funeral. This wasn't just about one message. This had been building for a while. And I had completely missed it. But what I didn't know yet was just how far it had already gone. Or how much they had done. While I thought everything was still normal. I didn't go home right away. I drove. No destination. No plan. Just movement. Because if I stopped, I knew I'd start thinking. And if I started thinking, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop. The roads blurred together. Traffic lights changed without me really noticing. At some point, I realized I'd been gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. So I pulled over. A quiet side street. No cars. No people. Just silence. And that's when it hit me. Not the anger. Not yet. The emptiness. Like something had been pulled out of my chest and nothing had been put back. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against the steering wheel, and finally let myself breathe. So unsteady. Bill. He didn't ask for you. Her words echoed again. And again. And again. I tried to push them away, but they stuck. Because no matter how much I didn't believe her, a small part of me still wondered. What if she's right? That's the kind of damage words like that do. They don't just hurt you. They make you question yourself. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes. Maybe 30. Time felt strange. But eventually my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. But something told me not to. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. The same one from earlier. I hesitated. Then answered. Hello. Miss Carter, the voice said again, calm and professional. This is Daniel from First National Bank. I called you earlier. I remember, I said, straightening slightly. You said something about a file? Yes, he replied. It's regarding your father's accounts. There are some documents here that require your attention. In person. A small knot formed in my stomach. What kind of documents? I'd prefer not to go into detail over the phone, he said carefully. But your name is listed as a key party. We've been trying to reach you. My grip tightened on the phone. Trying to reach me? Yes. We sent notices over the past 2 weeks. My mind went still. I didn't receive anything. Pause. Then they were acknowledged as delivered. Delivered. But not to me. I sat up fully now. Who acknowledged them? I asked. I'm not authorized to disclose that over the phone, he replied. But if you come in, we can go through everything together. My heart started beating faster. Not from panic. From something else. Something sharper. More focused. Hey, I said. I'll be there today. Thank you, Miss Carter. Ask for me at the front desk. The call ended. And just like that, the emptiness inside me shifted. Not gone. But replaced. With questions. I started the car again. This time I wasn't driving aimlessly. I knew exactly where I was going. The bank building was familiar. I'd been there before. Training sessions, occasional meetings, but never like this. Never as someone being called in. I parked, stepped out, and adjusted my bag on my shoulder. As I walked toward the entrance, I noticed something strange. I wasn't nervous anymore. Not the way I had been at the funeral. There was still something heavy sitting in my chest. But underneath it, there was something else. Clarity. Inside, the air was cool. Quiet. Professional. The kind of place where everything feels controlled. Predictable. I walked up to the front desk. Hi, I'm Vanessa Carter. I was told to ask for Daniel. The receptionist nodded politely. Of course. One moment. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then gestured toward a hallway. He'll meet you in conference room B. Thank you. As I walked down the hallway, I felt it again. That shift. Like I was stepping into something important. Something that had been waiting for me, whether I realized it or not. Daniel was already inside. Mid-40s, calm expression, neatly dressed. He stood when I entered. Miss Carter. Thank you for coming. Of course, I replied, taking a seat across from him. What's this about? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid a folder across the table. Thick. Organized. Intentional. This, he said, is what we've been trying to reach you about. I looked down at it. My name was printed on the tab. Clear. Visual. Unmistakable. What is it? I asked again. Daniel folded his hands. These are documents related to your father's financial accounts, authorizations, and recent activity. Recent activity. My stomach tightened. I thought everything was being handled, I said slowly. Pie's sister. Yes, he said, nodding. Your sister has been acting as primary contact. Something about the way he said it made me pause. Acting. I repeated. Another small pause. Then, that's part of why you're here. I opened the folder. Carefully. Like whatever was inside might change something. And the moment I saw the first page, I knew it already had. My name. Right at the top. Listed as primary authorized reviewer. I frowned. That doesn't make sense, I said. I was never told. That's consistent with what we've seen, Daniel replied. I looked up at him. What do you mean? He leaned forward slightly. Miss Carter, Based on these documents, you were not only listed. He paused, then finished the sentence. You were supposed to be involved in every major decision regarding these accounts. Every major decision. The room felt smaller, quieter, like everything had narrowed down to just those words. Because if that was true, then something was very, very wrong. I wasn't contacted, I said firmly. I believe you, he replied. And the notices? He glanced at the folder. They were signed for. My jaw tightened. By who? He held my gaze. That's something we can go through together. I looked back down at the documents, at the signatures, at the dates, at the transactions, and for the first time since that message, since the funeral, since everything, I felt it. Not confusion, not hurt. Something else, something sharper. Because this wasn't just about being excluded anymore. This wasn't just about family drama. This was about something deliberate, something controlled, something hidden. And as I turned the next page, I realized they didn't just leave me out. They made sure I stayed out. Suddenly, I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I was the one asking questions. And I wasn't going to stop. I didn't speak for a moment. I just stared at the pages in front of me. Numbers, dates, signatures. At first glance, everything looked normal, clean, organized, visual. But that's the thing about documents. They can look perfect and still be wrong. Walk me through this, I said finally, my voice steady. Daniel nodded. Of course. He turned the folder slightly, pointing to a section near the top. These are your father's primary accounts. Savings, investments, and a small business reserve fund. I followed along, scanning the details. Balances, transfers, authorization logs. Everything dated within the last few months. Now here, he continued, tapping a column of signatures, these are approvals for withdrawals and account changes. I leaned in slightly. And that's when I saw it. My name. Repeated. Over and over again. Signed. Authorized. Approved. My stomach dropped. That's not my signature. Daniel didn't react dramatically. He just nodded. I suspected as much. I looked up at him sharply. You suspected? There were inconsistencies, he said calmly. Small ones. The kind most people wouldn't notice. A strange, almost ironic feeling passed through me. Because noticing small inconsistencies, that was my job. I picked up one of the pages, studied the signature more closely. At a glance, it did look like mine. Same flow, same structure. But the spacing was slightly off. The pressure uneven. The last letter, too sharp. It wasn't me. It was someone trying to be me. How many of these are there? I asked. Daniel flipped a few pages. Multiple approvals over several weeks. Weeks. Not a one-time mistake. Not confusion. This was consistent, planned. And the notices you sent? I asked. The ones that were delivered? He pulled out another document. These required acknowledgement from the authorized reviewer. I scanned it. There was again my name, and beneath it, a signature. Who signed these? I asked, my voice quieter now. Daniel met my eyes. The signatures matched the ones on the withdrawal approvals. That wasn't what I asked. And we both knew it. I exhaled slowly. Hey, I said. Let's be clear. I placed the papers down, aligning them carefully. I didn't sign any of this. I wasn't contacted. I wasn't informed. I understand, he replied. And yet, I continued, tapping the page, someone has been using my name to move money, approve transactions, and respond to official notices. Yes. The room went still. But saying it out loud made it real. I leaned back slightly, my mind already moving. Patterns. Timelines. Access points. If this had been any other case, any other file, I would have already started building a report. Flagging inconsistencies. Tracing authorization chains. Identifying risk. But this wasn't just a case. This was my family. What kind of amounts are we talking about? I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. Significant. How significant? He turned to a summary page. I followed his finger as it moved down the list. And with every number, my chest tightened. Because this wasn't small. This wasn't a few $100s here and there. Those deliberate transfers from savings, liquidation of small investments, reallocation of funds, all approved under my name. Why wasn't this flagged sooner? I asked. It was, Daniel said. I looked up. What? That's why you're here. He slid another document toward me. Internal notes. Review flags. Escalation comments. There were irregularities, he explained, but because the approvals appeared to come from an authorized reviewer, meaning you, it didn't immediately trigger a full hold. Of course. As on paper. Everything pointed to me. And my sister? I asked carefully. What role does she play in all this? Daniel chose his words. She was listed as primary contact. She handled communication, submitted documentation, coordinated requests. Coordinated. That word again. Controlled. So she had access, I said. Yes. And she knew I was listed. Yes. I let that settle. Not as a question. As a fact. As at this point, there was no more confusion. No more benefit of the doubt. This wasn't an accident. I closed the folder slowly, my reflection faintly visible on the polished table surface. For years I had been the one in the background, the one who trusted, the one who didn't question. But sitting there, with proof in front of me, something shifted. They didn't just leave me out. They used me. Used my name, my position, my silence. And they assumed I'd never notice. I looked back up at Daniel. What happens now? I asked. He folded his hands again. That depends on how you want to proceed. Options. Process. Legal steps. I knew all of that. Better than most. But this wasn't just procedural. This was personal. Before anything formal, I said slowly, I need to understand the full scope. Of course. I want copies of everything. Every transaction. Every signed document. Every communication log. He nodded. We can arrange that. And one more thing, I added. Yes. I held his gaze. I don't want any alerts sent out yet. A slight pause. Then, understood. Because I wasn't ready to confront them. Not yet. Not without knowing everything. I gathered the documents, stacking them neatly. Controlled. Precise. The same way I handled every case. Except this time, I wasn't just reviewing a file. I was building something. And as I stood up to leave, there was only one thought in my mind. They thought I was still the quiet one. They had no idea. I had already started putting the pieces together. And when I finished, I wasn't going to ask questions. I was going to show them exactly what they did. In a way they couldn't ignore. I didn't go home after that. Not right away. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking lot again, but this time, everything felt different. The same steering wheel. The same seat. The same quiet space. But I wasn't the same person who had pulled over earlier that morning. Back then, I was trying to hold myself together. No, I was putting things together. The folder sat on the passenger seat. Thick. Heavy. Full of answers. And even more questions. I reached over, opened it again and started flipping through the pages. Slower this time. More carefully. Not as someone reacting, but as someone analyzing. Dates first. Always start with dates. I traced the timeline with my finger. Transaction, approval, acknowledgement. A pattern. Not random. Not rushed. Consistent. Controlled. Then the signatures. Every single one trying to mimic mine. At first glance they were convincing. But once you knew what to look for, they fell apart. The pressure points were off. The spacing inconsistent. The rhythm, forced. It was like someone had practiced. Not casually. Intentionally. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. There's no way this was rushed, I muttered under my breath. This took time. Effort. Planning. And then I saw something that made me pause. A date. One of the earlier approvals. I frowned slightly, scanning it again. As that date. I remembered it. It was a Tuesday. 3 weeks ago. I had stayed late at work that night, finishing a compliance review before a deadline. I remembered the exact moment I left the office. 8:47 p.m. because I had texted my manager about it. I flipped back to the document. The approval time? 8:52 p.m. 5 minutes later. I stared at it, then checked another. Another approval. Different day. Different time. Same pattern. Moments when I was occupied. Busy. Unavailable. Like someone knew exactly when I wouldn't question anything. A slow realization crept in. Not sudden. Not dramatic. Just steady. This wasn't just someone using my name. This was someone who knew my schedule. Someone who knew when I wouldn't notice. Someone close. I closed my eyes for a second, because even though I already knew the answer, part of me still didn't want to say it out loud. Elena, I whispered. Not as a question. As a fact. I opened my eyes again, sharper now. Focused. Because once you accept something like that, you stop hesitating. I picked up my phone. Scrolled through old messages. Call logs. Missed calls. And there was a gap. Right around the time all of this started. She had stopped answering me. Gradually. Not all at once. First shorter replies. Then delays. Then nothing. At the time I told myself she was busy. Stressed. Dealing with everything. But now. It looked different. It looked like distance. Created on purpose. So I wouldn't ask questions. So I wouldn't notice changes. So I wouldn't be involved. I let out a quiet breath. Not shaky. Not emotional. Just controlled. Because something inside me had settled. The doubt was gone. The confusion, gone. What was left was clarity. And with clarity comes direction. I picked up the folder again and flipped to the summary page. Total amounts. Final balances. Remaining accounts. They had moved a lot. But not everything. And that was their mistake. Because in their minds, this was already over. They had the funeral. They had control. They had the narrative. I was out. Or at least, that's what they believed. I reached for my phone again. Scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in a long time. Mr. Harris. The family's old lawyer. He had worked with my dad for years. Handled documents, contracts, estate planning. But recently, Elena had taken over communication. Said she'd handle everything. At the time I didn't question it. No, I saw it for what it was. A way to control information. I pressed call. It rang twice. Then, hello. His voice was older, steady. Mr. Harris, I said. It's Vanessa. A brief pause. Then warmth. Vanessa? It's been a while. It has, I replied. I need to ask you something. Of course. I glanced at the folder beside me, then back at the windshield. Did my father ever make any specific arrangements regarding his accounts? Anything that involved me directly? Silence. Not long, but enough. Then, why are you asking? I didn't hesitate, because I just found out my name has been used on multiple financial approvals I never signed. Another pause. This one heavier. And when he spoke again, his tone had changed. Vanessa, I think you should come see me. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today, he added. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Okay. The call ended. I sat there for a moment, letting everything settle into place. The documents, the signatures, the timeline, the silence. All of it pointing in one direction. They thought they had already won. They thought I was still the same person who would stay quiet, stop things, walk away. But they forgot something. I had spent years learning how to find the truth, in places people thought no one would look. No. I wasn't just looking. I was ready. Because the next time I saw them, I wasn't going to ask for a place in the family. I was going to show them exactly what they did. And make sure they couldn't deny it. Not this time. Mr. Harris didn't waste time. The moment I walked into his office, he was already standing, a file in his hands. Older than the one I carried, worn at the edges like it had been opened and closed more times than it should have. Vanessa, he said, his voice steady but serious. Sit down. I did. No hesitation this time. No second guessing. Just focus. He placed the file in front of me but didn't open it yet. Instead he looked at me, really looked at me. I need you to be honest with me, he said. Have you signed any financial documents related to your father's accounts in the past month? No, I said immediately. None. He nodded once. Like that confirmed something. Then he opened the file. Inside were documents I hadn't seen before. Older ones. Originals. Estate outlines. Authorization structures. Legal notes. And right there highlighted clearly. My name. Primary authorized reviewer. Oversight required for major transactions. Dual acknowledgement for withdrawals above a certain amount. I felt my chest tighten. Wait, this means... Yes, he said quietly. Nothing significant was supposed to happen without you. I leaned back slightly trying to process it. So how did it? He exhaled slowly. That's what concerns me. I slid my own folder across the desk. These were processed, I said. With my name. My signature. He opened it. Started flipping through. And within seconds, his expression changed. Not shocked. Not confused. Certain. These aren't yours, he said. I know. He nodded. And whoever did this had access. Not just to the accounts, but to information about you. I figured that part out, I replied quietly. He closed both folders and folded his hands. Vanessa, I'm going to be direct. I met his eyes. Good. This isn't just a family misunderstanding, he said. This is fraud. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Final. I didn't react the way I thought I would. No gasp. No breakdown. As by then, I already knew. I want to proceed, I said. He studied me for a moment. Once we start this, there's no going back. I know. You're prepared for the consequences? I didn't even blink. They should have thought about that. A small pause. Then he nodded. All right. The process moved faster than I expected. Documentation. Verification. Cross-checking signatures. Pulling access logs. Everything I had already started building now had legal weight behind it. And for the first time since all of this began, I wasn't doing it alone. A week later, everything was ready. Mr. Harris called them in. Not for a confrontation. Not officially. For a final estate clarification. Neutral. Routine. Harmless. At least, that's what they thought. I arrived early. Sat quietly in the same room where it would all unfold. Hands folded. Back straight. Calm. No anger. No nerves. Just certainty. They walked in together. Elena first. Confident. Composed. Like always. Then a couple of relatives behind her. Support. Witnesses. And when she saw me sitting there, she stopped. Just for a second. That flicker again. Why is she here? She asked, her tone already sharp. Mr. Harris didn't react. Please have a seat. She didn't like that. I could tell. But she sat anyway. The room settled. Quiet. Controlled. This meeting, Mr. Harris began, is to clarify final financial positions and authorizations related to Mr. Carter's accounts. Elena crossed her arms slightly. I've already handled all of that. I'm aware, he said calmly. Then he opened the file. However, he continued, there are discrepancies that require review. That word again. Discrepancies. I watched her expression shift. Subtle. But real. What kind of discrepancies? She asked. Mr. Harris turned a document toward her. Multiple transactions authorized under Vanessa's name. Silence. Then, that's correct, she said quickly. She was listed. Yes, he replied. But she did not sign these. Another silence. Heavier this time. Elena let out a small laugh. Tight. Forced. Then maybe she forgot. That's when I spoke. For the first time since they walked in. I didn't. Every eye in the room shifted to me. I held her gaze. Steady. Taken. I reviewed every document, I continued. Every timestamp. Every signature. I leaned forward slightly. And none of them are mine. Her expression hardened. You're seriously doing this right now? No, I said calmly. You already did this. Mr. Harris placed another set of papers on the table. Forensic review confirms inconsistencies in the signatures. The air changed. Completely. Relatives shifted in their seats. Whispers started. Elena's composure cracked just a little. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I handled everything while she used my name," I cut in. Silence again. Pling. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You told me not to come to the funeral," I said. "Said I wasn't family." I tilted my head slightly. But somehow, I was still important enough to sign off on everything. She didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Mr. Harris stepped in. "These transactions are now under formal review. Pending outcome, there may be legal consequences." That's when it hit her. Not emotionally. Practically. "Wait, what?" she said, her voice rising. "Legal consequences?" "Yes," he replied. "Forgery. Misrepresentation. Unauthorized financial activity." The room was no longer quiet. It was tense. No. This wasn't a family issue. This was real. Elena looked at me. Not cold this time. Not confident. Panicked. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said quickly. "We can fix this." I shook my head once. "So, final." "No," I said. "You should have thought about fixing it before you did it." And just like that, everything shifted. The control. The narrative. The power. Gone. It didn't end loudly. There were no dramatic exits. No shouting matches. Just consequences. Investigations started. Accounts were frozen. Processes put in place. And for the first time in a long time, the truth was no longer hidden behind family roles or assumptions. It was documented. Clear. Undeniable. People reached out after that. Relatives. Old family friends. Some apologizing. Some trying to explain. I didn't respond to most of them. Not out of anger. But because I didn't need to anymore. I wasn't looking for validation. Not from them. I had something better. Clarity. And as I walked away from all of it, I realized something that stayed with me. They erased me when it suited them. But the truth? The truth doesn't disappear just because people choose not to see it. And sooner or later, finds its way back. If you've ever been pushed out, ignored, or made to feel like you didn't belong in your own family, I see you. Share your story in the comments. You're not alone in this. Subscribe if you're done staying silent. And click hype to help this reach someone who needs it. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your support makes a huge difference.